Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching fifth and final part of What If Naruto Became Strongest Man of Elemental Nation. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Naruto and the girls have been on the open seas for 2 weeks now. They left the elemental nations and set sail for a new life. Since then, the four of them have been enjoying their trip, because as soon as they lost sight of the elemental nations, they all felt a huge weight lift off their shoulders. Even though they were finally free of the nightmares that came with living in that cursed land, they couldn't forget their past lives. The four-person crew has been busy for the past 2 weeks, even though the sounds of the clear blue sea were soothing. They always stayed in top shape. For everyone knew, even Akemi, a Biju, should never let down her guard, even when things were calm. So, the four did some light warm-up exercises to stay on their feet and get stronger without hurting the boat they stood on. Even in the first week, though, there have already been some interesting events. For example, on the second day of their trip, they saw something in the sky that got hit by one of Makoto's Raiden Jutsu and then fell to the deck, where it was cooked to a crisp. The strange thing about the bird, though, was that it was wearing some kind of hat with the word, News Ku, stitched into it. But that wasn't the only strange thing about the bird. It was also carrying a bag of what looked like papers. Usually, things like this are a waste of time and not even worth looking into, but as former shinobi and a Biju with thousands of years of knowledge, they all knew that everything was useful. And all of them were right. When the four searched them, they found that they were newspapers, with bounty, written on slips of paper with pictures of specific people's faces. But that wasn't all. Much to Naruto's amusement, they also found a map. A map of everything. This map was strange, but it helped everyone see how much more there is than what the elemental nation saw. For the map showed a lot of things that shocked all four of them to the core. Because, compared to the lands they were seeing now, the elemental nation was just a tiny dot on the map. Even though most of them didn't know what to do with it, Naruto was a little surprised that Makoto was more interested in the map than the other four. It was as if she were born to read maps, figure out what they meant, and make new ones. Kushina had said that she was one of the smartest people she had ever seen, both in battle and when it came to reading maps of enemy bases. But there was more to it than that. Makoto had spent the whole night in her room drawing the map, its islands, the names of each sea, and the big line of landmass. It took a while, but Makoto finally came out and told everyone what she had learned. Flashback. So, you found out what kinds of lands and seas there are? Naruto asked, looking at the new map Makoto had made from the old one. This time, the words were clearer and the names of each sea were written out, but the islands were still unnamed because it was pretty obvious what they were. They hadn't seen any more islands yet. Still, it's so well done that it beats every other navigator's map I've seen by a long shot. The woman nodded and sat down on a chair. She had a small smile on her face as she grabbed her tools and started to explain, while Kushina and Akemi looked over her shoulder with curious eyes. Makoto took a deep breath and explained while pushing her glasses up a bit. That was another reason why Makoto probably needed her glasses when she worked on the maps. Yes, I have, or at least most of them, because I'm not sure if they're right or not. The language is similar to ours, but not exactly the same. All of the land is the same as on the other map. Only the names show which sea is which and what that huge red line of land is. I could figure out what I could, though, so let me tell you what we have here. When Naruto nodded, she went on. From what I could see, we have the sea, which is called Bursh, the Blue Sea, and is divided into 4 parts, each of which has its own name. Here's what they are. Kita no Umi, North Blue, which is the northern part of the map right here, she said, and he nodded. When she saw this, she said, the second one is called South Blue, Minami no Umi, and it is the southern part of the map. The third one is called Nishi no Umi, West Blue, and it is in the western part of the map. The last one is called Higashi no Umi, and it is in the eastern part of the map, East Blue. From what I could figure out, those are the 4 seas, she said. Then she looked up and saw Naruto nodding. Oh, I see. Then what are these lines right here in that big red landmass? Makoto asked, a little embarrassed. Oh, I forgot to explain that. That huge red landmass is called the Akai Suchi no Tairiku, the red line. As far as I can tell, it's a line that divides the four seas, so there's only one way to get from one to the other. That's this, she said, pointing to the middle of the red line to show how the four lines connected to the four seas all crossed each other. Then she put her finger on the last line and moved it along the red line to a certain line. That was what the map called the Rivsu Mountain, reverse mountain, to where this line connects to this line, which is called the Idai Naru Crow, the Grand Line. That's what it's called and where it is. I don't know why it's called that, but that's what it is called and where it is, she said, and Naruto nodded. Before Kushina noticed something and pointed it out. Anyo, Miko-chan, what's that right there? She asked, pointing to the green lines that surrounded the Grand Line and touched the four seas. Makoto gave a small smile when she saw this and then said. Yes, that's what I could figure out. It's called the KMU Baruto, the calm belt, but I don't know why. Kushina looked at this for a moment before nodding. Naruto looked at the map again after going over everything Makoto had told him and putting it away. Oh, I see. And do you know exactly where we are? This made Makoto frown as she looked at the map again, still not sure where they were. She fiddled with a pencil for a while and then sighed. I'm sorry, Naruto-san, but I don't know exactly where we are without getting to another island. I'm sorry, she said, a little disappointed in herself. Kushina gently put her arm around her shoulder. Akemi just smiled softly and looked at Naruto, who was smiling, which surprised her. She watched as he slowly put his hand on Makoto's shoulder, which made her stop in her tracks. But what he said next made her drop her pencil in shock. Don't worry, Makoto-san. You've already done more than I could have asked for. You not only made a new map out of the old one, but you also translated it for us. That will help us all a lot in the future, and since you did such a good job, I want you, Uchiha Makoto, to be our crew's navigator. He said this with a small smile and a mental laugh as he saw the shocked looks on the girls' faces and heard the sound of a pencil rolling on the wooden floor. Makoto couldn't believe what she had just heard. Naruto wanted her to be the crew's navigator? He had enough faith in her to give her such an important job. A job that helps the person in charge of keeping the ship on course and on its path? Even though she could hardly believe it, the words still rang true in her mind. Slowly, she looked up and saw Naruto's golden eyes looking down at her and staring into her black ones. But what really broke her right there was the approval in his eyes, which made her cry. Her eyes filled with tears she hadn't shed yet, and her hands and lips just trembled until it was too much for her. Which led her to say something. I won't let you down, ninja. I'm going to be the best navigator you've ever seen. That's what I promise you with all my heart. She said it with such conviction that both Akemi and Kushina were a little taken aback. Naruto, on the other hand, did nothing but nod his head and pat Makoto on the shoulder before walking toward the door. Then I expect nothing less from you, Makoto-san, he said. But don't overwork yourself. That would be bad for your health, which is something I don't want. With that, he shut the door, leaving 3 shocked women behind. Well, that was before his words had a full effect on them, which is why they all did something. That being the case, Akemi gave Makoto-chan a big, teasing grin before she said, Wow, Makoto-chan, it sounds like Naruto-kun is starting to respect you more now, if those words are any indication. She said this with a giggle. Makoto just turned a bright red, which Kushina noticed while Akemi was too busy laughing to notice. Leaning down, Kushina asked Miko-chan with a smile, Why are you blushing? Kushina saw Makoto blush even more, which made her grin even bigger. Then she leaned down to whisper in her ear, Is it because Naru putting Kun so much trust in you, or is it because of something else? I wonder, with a tone as playful as the clear blue sky. Makoto shivered at what she said, but she didn't want to look at her because her face had already answered Kushina's question. It shone even brighter until it was the same color as Kushina's blood-red hair. Kushina's grin turned into a smile that didn't have any of her usual pranks or mischief in it. Instead, it showed that she was happy and content, which surprised Makoto on the inside. When Kushina said the next thing, she couldn't hold it in any longer. I see. You like Naru-kun as well, nay? Well, I don't mind sharing, but only with Akemi-chan and you, Miko-chan. Anyone else, and I would have killed them already. So, do your best to win his love, because you have my permission. With that, Makoto couldn't stop crying until she got a nosebleed and fell asleep on her desk. Kushina smiled. End of flashback. Since then, Makoto has been true to her word, and even though Naruto didn't know it, her work impressed him every day. At night, she kept going over the map again and again, looking at every single detail, no matter how big or small. Makoto wanted to prove herself, and she did so every day. She not only got better at navigating, but she also learned more about where they were. To do this, Makoto went outside and looked around the bird's nest, as sailors call it, before writing down what she could find and running back to her room. This worried both Kushina and Akemi, but Naruto told them that he would talk to her if she got too crazy. On the fourth day of their trip, she did slow down a bit, which was good, but that was because of something else. It caught their attention because she was moving more slowly than usual and seemed to be moody, you could say. It got to the point where Akemi could tell Makoto was acting strangely, but it wasn't until the fifth day of their trip that it really caught her attention. Flashback. Akemi walked down the hall toward the captain's quarters with a serious look on her usually easygoing and sometimes playful face. It's been 5 days since they got back from their trip, and Akemi has never been happier. However, when Makoto started acting strangely, she looked into her jeans because she smelled like a demon. For a while, she could only smell people, worry, happiness, and other things like that. But one thing caught her attention, and she needed to talk to Naruto about it right away. As Akemi walked up to his door, he took a deep breath. Knock, knock. Come on in. When Akemi heard this, she opened the door and saw Naruto sitting at his desk reading what looked like another map that Makoto had made. As his eyes moved over the map with such intense focus that it made Akemi shiver just a little, his face was etched with concentration. Not because of fear or some other silly reason. But it was because he was excited. Akemi walked up to him and said, "Naruto-kun, we need to talk right now." This made her feel better. When he heard what she said, he looked up to see her serious face. He put down the map. The anger in his eyes was gone, but he still had the same coldness he had always had. Yes, Akemi-chan, what is it? Since the voyage, his relationship with Akemi has been a little strange, since Naruto knew about the Biju before he did and has known about him for as long as Kushina has. She has known Kushina all her life and has seen him for what he is. Like Kushina, she knows the things he has done. Akemi knows everything about him from Kushina, so he thought it was only fair for him to be friendly around Akemi. But that didn't mean that Akemi was only nice to him. Well, it's about Makoto-chan. For a while now, we've all been able to tell that something is wrong with her, right? He nodded. He has watched her slowly change, and he could tell that something was wrong with her. He asked her about it, but she told him not to worry, which made him worry even more. He didn't know why he was worried about her, but Makoto's hard work and dedication to what she was good at got rid of most of his doubts about her in just a week. He couldn't figure out why, but he did know that he would do anything to help Makoto, who was not only Kushina's best friend but also Uchiha Makoto was his nakama, comrade. That alone was more than enough for him to. Well, I've been sniffing her scent for the past day or so to see if there was anything wrong with her, and it seems like she's pretty normal overall. But when Naruto heard the word, but, he narrowed his eyes when he saw Akemi's worried face. Yes? The Kitsune Biju sighed and looked him in the eye before speaking. Well, it seems like out of all the emotions she has, she's trying to hide some kind of pain. Not only does her scent have a hint of pain lately, but her body is also starting to show signs of physical pain from the inside out. I can tell you right now that something is going on with Makoto-chan and her body, and I know what it is. This made Naruto pay attention to what she said. Oh, then what is it? This time, Akemi sat down on Naruto's bed before she spoke. This time, Naruto noticed that her red-rimmed eyes were now dead serious, with a glow in them that showed how important what she was about to say was. Well, it looks like Makoto-chan isn't really a person. Once Naruto heard those words, his eyes got a serious glint, and he stood up, casting a shadow over Akemi's form that was a good few inches taller than Akemi herself. His face was as hard as stone as he looked at Akemi to see if her words were a lie. When he saw none, he sighed and then spoke. I see. Then tell me more about what she really is. From what I've seen, she seems as human as can be. The Biju shook her head. That's the thing. Makoto-chan doesn't know it either, but from what I can tell, I smelled the scent of another demon from Makai deep inside her, and it was very familiar. This demon could hide its scent in any way it wanted so that it couldn't be found or didn't want to be found. I and my clan, the Kitsunes, were the only ones who could smell them. However, the demon race itself was very strong, even stronger than the Biju. The reason Makoto has their blood is probably because one of the demons mated with one of Makoto's ancestors, and the demon's blood got weaker over time until it could no longer wake up. Naruto nodded as she talked. I see. Then what is she, and is it possible to wake up her demonic blood? This made Akemi look surprised, but she nodded no matter what. Well, for one thing, Eon's Makai have called her the Yami no Gurka Ukami, which means the Darkness Hellfire Wolf. This is a wolf that specializes in the Makai elements of both darkness and hellfire, which are both very strong and can hurt Biju. They are very powerful and should be treated with the utmost care when seen, but I'm surprised that Miko-chan is also one of them. Anyway, to answer your second question, if Makoto wants to wake up her blood, I could do it fully and completely by using one of my demonic techniques. However, there would be one drawback. This made Naruto raise an eyebrow. That being? After taking a breath, Akemi frowned. Makoto will no longer be human. She will be a full demon, but she will still be able to use her Sharingan, Copy Wheel Eye, because her bloodline is demonic, as are most other bloodlines. Her physical strength, speed, reflexes, durability, and stamina would all go through the roof, and her sight and smell would reach demonic levels. She would be able to see farther than any human or even some demons, and she would be able to smell anything, no matter how far away or what it smells like. Most of her kind, however, likes that particular smell. Last but not least, Makoto would become immortal, just like me. She wouldn't be able to die at a young age and she wouldn't get old. She will stop getting older at age 21, and she will be able to grow back a lost limb, but it will take some time to get used to. Naruto nodded in agreement as he pushed her to continue. Next, she would have a demon form like mine when I'm in my beast form, or a hybrid form where only her tail and ears, which are animal-like, would be visible. Other than that, there isn't much else to say. I do need to ask, though. Why do you want to wake up her blood? She asked in a curious way. As Naruto listened to her explain, he nodded and thought about how Makoto would react when she heard this. When she does hear about it, he'll probably smirk a little because he knows how Kushina will react. She'll probably glomp Makoto while smiling happily. It was a funny thought, to be honest. He looked back at Akemi and shook his head. He remembered her question, to which he had replied, "Isn't it obvious?" Well, you told me that this is starting to hurt her, and I can't let that happen. Makoto-san is a member of our crew, and I won't let something as silly as this hurt her. That's why Akemi is there. I want her demonic blood to wake up before it completely takes over her and hurts her beyond repair. I can't let that happen because she's Kushina friend Chan's and, by extension, your friend, so I don't want her dead. When Akemi heard this, she smiled so big that Naruto thought it might split her face. At that point, she did. She yelled, "Thank you, Naruto-kun." Then she lost her cool and jumped on Naruto, making him fall back from his chair and land on the floor. He grunted in pain, and when he looked down, he saw Akemi grinning like a fox, with her 2 fluffy red fox ears and 9 flowing tails all twitching in excitement. Naruto's eyebrow twitched, and he looked down at Akemi before saying, "Oi, oi, get off of me." But she didn't listen. Instead, she moved closer to him, which surprised him, and Akemi let out a laugh, which surprised him even more. A purr. Akemi's purr was a mix of mischief and seduction that only a kitsune of her level could show. Her mouth was set in a fox-like grin that made the Z-ranked shinobi sweat a little. He didn't do anything as she slowly rubbed and touched his muscles from his chest to his stomach. When he felt Akemi's hands go down, his eyes got a little wider, and so did her smirk. Akemi was also very annoying, especially when she was around him. He quickly grabbed her hands, but not hard enough to break them like he's done to many others. Then he said, "Akemi-chan, get off me now or Kushi-hime and I won't be able to sleep together for the next month." Hearing this made Akemi's red-rimmed gems widen in fear, which made Naruto mentally grin. Naruto looked at her again and spoke. This time, he didn't laugh. Instead, he had the stone-cold serious golden eyes he was known for. "Now, Akemi, stop messing around. I want you to go get Kushina and Makoto and bring them all in here to meet me. I want her blood to wake up before this pain gets any worse." She heard his "no questions asked" tone and saw his golden eyes staring her down without even a hint of doubt about what he was saying. It just showed her how much this one man proved to be the greatest alpha, no, the ultimate alpha. He wasn't afraid of her because he and she both knew that he had the same physical and mental strength as she did. But I feel like there's so much more to him. Why is that? "Akemi-chan, did you hear me?" he asked. His voice jolted the kitsune out of her thoughts, and she quickly remembered what he had said. She nodded and left the room with a sway of her hips and a wink that hinted at something. Throughout it all Naruto did was let out a sigh of both. And just a little bit of fun. "That woman will kill me," he said. End of flashback. On the same day, Akemi rounded up Kushina and Makoto and took them to Naruto's quarters, telling them it was an important announcement. They were confused, but when they got there, they saw a serious Naruto standing in front of Makoto with his eyes fixed on her. When he stared at her with his golden eyes, it really made the woman fidget. It was like he was looking right into her soul, searching for something. He told them that Akemi had told him something important about Makoto that needed to be said right away. This made Kushina and Makoto very confused, but Akemi spoke either way. She talks about what she learned about Makoto and her hidden genes. And, to Makoto's surprise, the source of her pain came from inside her body. It was explained to Makoto, who was getting more shocked, and Kushina, who was surprised, that her demonic blood was coming out because Akemi's yukai were always around Makoto, waking up the yukai blood in Makoto. Kushina did exactly what Naruto thought she would do after hearing everything. Flashback. Sugoi. So Makoto-chan is like Akemi-chan? That's so cool. That is so incredible. Kushina yelled, "Dattebane." With a huge smile that made her angelic face look like it was going to break. And, just as Naruto had expected, she hugged the shocked Makoto. Who was losing their color? Kushi-chan, let go of Makoto-san. She's turning blue, no, purple, Uzumaki said as she blinked and looked back at Makoto. When she looked back at Makoto, her eyes widened in a funny way, and she quickly let go of Makoto, who fell to the floor gasping for air. She loved Kushina, but when she got excited, the woman was as strong as a titan. She said, "Hihihi Gomen Miko-chan. I guess I got a little too excited, Ttebane," to which Makoto just smiled. When Naruto saw this, he watched with his usual blank eyes, but he was clearly amused. It was a funny sight, even in a serious situation, because Kushina could always make them laugh. No matter how big or small, Kushina has always been able to make people feel better. This is one of the things he loves about her and one of the reasons he fell in love with her in the first place. But when she's mad or upset, not even he would stand in her way. Akemi smiled through it all. She always thought her container's attitude was cute because it reminded her a lot of a baby's. But after they saw that the serious mood was back and stronger than ever, they went back to being themselves. Makoto took a small breath and said, "Okay, so if that's the case, I won't deny that I've been feeling pains in my body, like something was forcing it to move and churn. I don't know why, but if this is why, I want it to stop." By any means necessary, she told the three of them in a tone they were used to, but Naruto liked even more. It was a tone of absolute, unwavering determination that could not and would never be broken. Naruto could tell Makoto had a strong will that not many people could match or even hope to match. He had to admit that Makoto was an interesting woman, but that didn't mean he didn't have a little bit of doubt about her. Just that he liked Makoto's determination and will because it reminded him of Kushina's. Hey. Good answer. Makoto. Even though he didn't change on the outside, he had a look of approval in his eyes. Very well, then. Akemi will be the one to wake up your blood. So I want you to do whatever she says until it's done, right? He asked. The boy gave him a quick nod. When he saw this, he looked at Akemi and gave her a nod. Then let's start. Akemi, if you'd like, said Makoto. The Biju nodded and walked over to Makoto. After that, Akemi spoke with a smile of her own, which made Makoto feel a little better. She watched as Akemi put her right hand on her forehead before speaking. Don't worry, Makoto-chan. This won't hurt at all, she said with a smirk. Things will be different when you notice the changes, though, Makoto said with a raised eyebrow. What do you mean by changes? Makoto said something, but then she passed out from the sudden rush of yukai that came from Akemi in her outstretched hand and wrapped around her body. She looked quietly at Makoto, who was passed out on the ground, before turning back to Naruto. When she did, he gave her a nod, which made Kushina smile in thanks. When she saw this, she said, "Alright, here we go. Akuma no Magiku. Akuma no Kai no Mezame, Demon Magic, Awakening of Demon Blood." With that, Akemi focused her yukai even more on Makoto, but this time, it went deeper into her and went after the hidden Ukami blood with her. The way she sued was something only she knew how to do, but that's not what people thought it was. It went after a person's inner genes, even the weaker ones, and literally woke them up from inside. So using this would bring Makoto's hidden heritage to life, taking away everything that made her human. All of a sudden, they all felt the pressure of a gravity that didn't exist, but Naruto, Akemi, and Kushina hadn't felt anything like it before. I mean someone who has fought Biju and won and someone who was almost a Biju. Queen of the Kitsune will make you immune to that kind of pressure, and Kushina was Akemi's container, so she was pretty much immune to it as well. This pressure was coming from Makoto, whose body was now surrounded by the blackest black, which seemed to get darker and darker with each passing second. The pressure kept going up, which surprised Akemi even more on the inside. Soon, the black yukai wrapped Makoto up in a humanoid cocoon, but the three people inside didn't say a word. One was curious, another was interested, and the third was worried, but she was also getting excited. It only took a few minutes, but soon the pressure dropped so much that it was like it wasn't even there, and white lines started to appear on the cocoon. No one could breathe for a moment, until cracks started to show up more and more, until the cocoon was surrounded by cracks that could be seen. And then, all of a sudden, the cocoon started to fall apart. It flaked off like old paint, and then the flakes vanished into almost nothing. So, the new Makoto was left behind. She hadn't changed a lot, except for a few things, like how Akemi said her body now had some animal-like traits. They were two sets of black wolf ears that moved randomly, but Akemi was surprised to find 4 wolf tails on her back. Not only that, but her teeth were much longer than they used to be, and the nails on her hands grew longer and sharper, making them look like claws. Overall, Makoto didn't change that much, though. Naruto and Akemi's eyes were a little wider than usual, but they were both thinking the same things about what they were seeing. Akemi thought, oh my Kami, she already has 4 tails. Naruto thought, wow, 4 tails.
That's impressive.
Very impressive. Kushina's response, on the other hand, was the most likely. Her shout of, kawaii, woke Makoto up. She would have looked around to see who it was before she felt a weight hit her. Before she saw this person do something that made her shiver and let out a moan of approval because she couldn't help herself. This got the attention of Akemi and Naruto, and when they looked at Makoto, they were very amused to see Kushina lying on her back, grinning like a child as she scratched Makoto's new limbs. She looked like a child in a candy store. Akemi couldn't stop laughing when she saw her excited face and wide, violet eyes. Naruto just smiled at the display. Well, I can tell that things are going to get a lot more interesting. And he was so right. End of flashback. Since then, Akemi, who has known Makoto's kind the longest, has taught her how to be what she is. It took Makoto a day or 2 to get used to her new body. Akemi had already taught her how to change, but she didn't dare do it because she was afraid she would destroy the ship they were on. That didn't mean that she couldn't change into smaller versions of herself, like the one-tailed cub that Akemi taught her to become. Which made Kushina give her a death hug. But that wasn't all. Makoto also learned from Akemi what the Ukami were good at and how to control her elements, which were both the darkness element and hellfire. To Akemi's surprise, Makoto had a very high affinity for both of these elements. More so than with other demons from Makai or even with some demon lords. So, Akemi began to teach her how to control the elements, which at first turned out to be both very hard to do and a lot of damage. Makoto once made a mistake with her control, and a part of the ocean turned into a huge crater that was still being filled with water. The problem, though, was the size of the craters. It was the size of the Ichibi because from then on, Naruto did everything he could to make sure Makoto's control of her elements was at its best, even if he had to make up new exercises to do so. He wasn't going to destroy the ship like he did with the ocean.
No, he wasn't at all.
But Makoto has been acting differently in the last 2 days, or maybe it was something else. Which was when both Kushina and Akemi noticed that Makoto was showing Naruto a lot more affection. Akemi thought that Makoto's feelings for him might have grown stronger as she changed. So she is more brave around Naruto than she has ever been. This made Kushina smile because she knew Makoto would finally show her captain and Naruto how determined she was. But things also happened because Kushina wanted to talk to Akemi about something on the 9th day of their journey, when Makoto was training. Something that was so important that she didn't want to tell Naruto or Makoto about it. If Naruto wasn't told, that says a lot. But what she told Akemi changed her life for good. Flashback. Okay, Kushi-chan. What's the matter? The worried Kitsune asked, you've been acting weird lately. What's going on? She and Kushina were standing in her room, with Akemi standing in front of Kushina. The woman sitting on the edge of her bed looked nervous. Akemi wasn't sure what was going on, but she decided to check out what was wrong with her old container. Kushina took a deep breath, looked up at Akemi, and her nervous violet eyes met hers. Well, it's just that, Akemi-chan, you've known about me for as long as I've known you. I like to think of us as sisters, and I won't lie to you because you'd know if I did. This made Akemi nod, but Kushina's words touched her heart. Kushina really did think of them as sisters, and Akemi agreed. They really were like sisters in every way. Except blood, though, she thought to herself. That's why, when I think about my life, my battles, my experiences, everything, and compare it to what Naruto-kun has been through, it shows that nothing I've done even comes close. Since I was a child, Naruto-kun has always been there to protect me, train me, and fight for the safety of our clan. Even now, he fights enemies that are much stronger than I could imagine. Kushina went on to say that even though tears were forming in her beautiful violet eyes, she wouldn't let them fall. Akemi looked at Kushina with a sad face and started to say, Kushina. but was cut off when Kushina just looked at her with a face that made Akemi want to let out a small gasp. It was a pleading look that was so strong and deep that it really hit Akemi in her heart and hurt her so much. The kitsune could only watch, even though she wanted to give Kushina a hug and tell her it was okay right then and there. But that would be wrong. Kushina had. No. She had to get to the end of what she was going to say. That's why, Akemi-chan. If there was any why, I mean, is there any why I could also turn into a demon? I know this is a serious question, but Akemi-chan, I've told you before that you're like a sister to me, and I want to be able to fight and get stronger than I am now. I don't know why, but I have the feeling that we'll be in a lot more fights in the future, even though we left the elemental nations to stop fighting. I just have a feeling that we'll fight a lot in the next life, and this time, Akemi-chan. Kushina's voice was getting more and more determined, which shocked Akemi, who was already shocked. Though, when Kushina looked her in the eyes, the Kitsune Queen couldn't help but smile when she saw the once lovable violet orbs had turned into a pair of violet gems that seemed to be unable to fall, unable to lose, and most of all, they gave off a pure, unbreakable and indestructible resolve that Akemi had only seen in one other person. Naruto being what he is. Hey, they have more in common than they think. Akemi shook her head and looked at Kushina with a blank stare that didn't show any sign of what was going on in her mind. A tense silence followed until Akemi said, I see. Are you sure of what you're asking? Are you really ready to give up your humanity and become a demon so you can fight with Naruto-kun? Because if you do, you can't go back. Her words were as cold as ice and as hard as the hardest metal. Her red, slit-like eyes were looking at Kushina with no emotion at all. Only to Akemi's shock and happiness, which made her shed a tear, did Kushina not only look into her eyes with her own determined ones, but also stand right in front of her and stare at her without any hesitation or fear. The intensity in her eyes was even stronger than it had been before. It was almost as if Akemi was looking right into Naruto's eyes. Soon, though, Kushina spoke up, and she didn't hesitate or show any fear about what she was asking. Akemi-chan. I told you I'd do anything, and I meant it. I want to fight by his side so I don't have to watch him fight anymore. I want to be there, next to him. I told you once, and I'll tell you again if I have to, I'm willing to give up my humanity to fight with him. She stood tall in front of Akemi, her gaze fixed, showing no sign of breaking or shifting under the Kitsune Queen's red eyes. After seeing Kushina standing there perfectly straight and hearing her words over and over in her head, Akemi finally broke from her emotionless stance and took on a more sisterly one, which surprised Kushina even more when the Biju slowly walked up to her and hugged the younger woman. She was too shocked to notice that Akemi's eyes were filled with tears and that she had a red glow coming from her. Kushi-chan, you don't know how happy I am to hear you say those things, to hear that you think of me as a sister, even if you're wrong to think I'm useless because I'm anything but that. You are what makes Naruto-kun do what he has done. You are the only reason he has done what he has done. But some of what you say is true, so I won't argue with you, she said, tilting her head back to look into Kushina's violet eyes, which were wide with surprise. There will always be battles for us to fight, whether they are physical, mental, or emotional. No matter where we go, we will always have to fight enemies, no matter how big or small they are. But then again, what fun is life without a little excitement, eh? She said with a smirk, making Kushina laugh. But if you really want to do this, if you really want to become a demon, I know one way to do it and also. Akemi leaned down toward Kushina with a smirk, and their noses were almost touching by the time she stopped. Her smirk changed into a kitsune grin, which made Kushina blink in surprise. It will also make us official sisters. When I do this, we will be full-blooded sisters, she said. Kushina's eyes got so big that they looked like they might pop out of their sockets. She couldn't believe what she had just heard, but the words kept coming back to her like a horn. She just stood there and looked at Akemi with a blank face. Before her face broke into a smile that made Akemi a little nervous as her violet eyes grew bigger from crying and excitement. Akemi knew that one of Kushina's small dreams was for her to be a real sister to her, not like they were now, but a real sister. They share the same blood and body. Even though they looked like twins, that was just how they looked. Except, of course, for the eyes. Really? Akemi just nodded, which was a full confirmation that it was true and that Kushina had let it go. Woohoo! We appreciate it, Akemi-ne-chan. Thank you, Databane. She shouted happily, wrapping her arms tightly around the Kitsune Queen, who was grinning at Kushina's reaction and when she called her Ne-chan. Okay, thanks, but I need you to stop spinning me around so I can do the technique. Please put me down and stand still. This is going to be a very delicate procedure. Kushina quickly let go of Akemi and stood still when she heard the serious tone in her voice. When the Biju saw this, it gave Kushina a small smile and a pat on the shoulder. I see you're ready. Or maybe you're excited to get going? No matter what, don't move while I do this, okay? The red-haired Uzumaki gave her a nod. Still grinning, Akemi shook her head and smiled, which made her laugh even more. Then she stood up straight, and the red lines in her eyes became more serious. She watched as Akemi grabbed both of her palms with her claws and mumbled words she couldn't even begin to say, but it sounded strangely like some kind of spell. After about a minute of chanting, Akemi stopped and spoke. Okay, here we go. Kitsune Magic. Kitsune Renewal Transfer. With that, Akemi slammed her hands on the floor. To Kushina's surprise, the blood didn't fly everywhere, but it did start to form around her in a circle that looked strangely like a Fuinjutsu design. She didn't have time to look more closely because the circle of blood seemed to glow before it erupted in a red light that surrounded Kushina, who was still standing but shocked. She was mesmerized by how the red glow seemed to get brighter and brighter until all of a sudden she felt herself getting sleepy. She didn't notice that the blood circle was slowly disappearing as the red glow mixed with the blood to give it a demonic red glow. Slowly, blood swirled around Kushina's sleepy body until it finally stopped. Then, without warning, it shot up over Kushina's body from head to toe. It moved slowly into Kushina's mouth, but she didn't react to it or the taste. Instead, she just stood there with a sleepy look on her face. The blood spread quickly through her mouth and body, getting into every vein, artery, and organ. When the blood was all the way inside Kushina, it did. She suddenly shone in a blinding white light that was so bright that Akemi had to close her eyes to protect them, but through it all, a smile crept up on her beautiful face. Hee, now Kushi-chan is really my sister. When she felt the light go out, she slowly opened her eyes and saw something that made Akemi smile. For it was her old container, which was now a blood sister, lying on the wooden floor. She looked a little bit different from Makoto, but not too much. Her body was leaner and slimmer, but the signs of muscle inside showed that it was built for high speeds that no one could figure out. Her long, blood-red hair was now all over the floor, and her bangs were covering her face while she slept. Her hair looked more like silk and fur than like hair. Overall, she didn't look any different at all. Except for her appendages. Akemi was a little surprised at first, but then she was very proud when she looked in the mirror and saw two red, furry fox ears where her human ears used to be. Her nose also twitched randomly, making her look very cute. Her teeth are longer than usual, and she now has claws on her nails like Makoto. But what was flowing on Kushina's backside just an inch from her butt made Akemi feel so proud. That's 5 red, fluffy foxtails that are 6 feet long and flow. Oh my. Kami. 5 tails. Already. Miko-chan was a surprise, but you, hey, are even more unexpected. Kushina-chan. Well, I guess I should have known. She's little sister. Akemi laughed out loud, which didn't seem to wake up the sleeping Kitsune Uzumaki Kushina, who had just turned into a fox. Slowly, Akemi walked up to her new sister and gently picked her up. She put her on her bed and covered her with a blanket. She then gave Kushina a small kiss on the forehead, which made the sleeping redhead make a small noise that made Akemi grin. Naru-kun, she mumbled as a small blush appeared on her face. It took everything Akemi had not to laugh out loud. She kind of knew what Kushina was dreaming about, but all she could say was, already, her kitsune genes were having a big effect on her. Akemi sighed and gave Kushina one more look before taking a step toward the door. She opened it and then shut it behind her. Once she was outside, though, Akemi let out a sigh and her face turned into a small smile. She looked to her left and saw Naruto, Kushina, and Makoto's captain Uzumaki D. leaning against the wall. "How long have you been there?" she asked. His golden eyes were hidden by his hair, so he couldn't see what was going on in them. Even though his tense body language showed he had been there for a while. "Since the beginning," he said, making Akemi close her eyes because she knew he had heard Kushina. She looked at him and saw that he hadn't moved from where he was, which made her raise an eyebrow in surprise. Before he said anything else, "Akemi-chan, now that Kushi-hime and Makoto-san have chosen this path, I want you to do everything you can to help train them in their powers. I have a feeling that our lives are going to become very dangerous. One in which we all need to be ready to fight, and we all need to be ready for the storm that's coming." He said this, and Akemi just nodded to show that she understood. When he saw this, he said, "Good, then Akemi-chan, go get some rest now. Training for the two of you starts tomorrow." Akemi nodded when he was done talking and walked past him. But before he could do anything, Akemi turned around and felt a wet pair of lips peck his cheek, which surprised him. Which ended quickly when Akemi pulled back, smiled, and looked at him with a grateful and, if his eyes weren't playing tricks on him, loving gaze. He couldn't say anything though, because Akemi turned around and kept walking with a hip sway that would have made any other man melt on the spot. "Good night, Naru-kun." Naruto was a little confused when Akemi left, but he just turned around, covered his smile, and went on his way. When he got back to his room, he touched his cheek where he could still feel Akemi's wet lips. "Hey. Little vixen." Out of nowhere, Naruto's eyes widened in surprise and pain, and he slammed one hand into the wall to hold himself there while the other went to his mouth. Cough, cough. When he looked at the hand he coughed into, his eyes grew a little wider when he saw blood. He clenched his bloody hand with a scowl. He let out a silent curse and went on as usual, but on the inside, he was different. "Damn it. What's wrong with me?" End of flashback. Many things have happened since then. For instance, Akemi kept her promise and began to teach Makoto and Kushina a lot about how to use their new demonic powers. Teaching them how to better control their new source of energy, Yukai, which was similar to chakra but demonic and 100 times stronger and denser than normal chakra. She taught them how to use their powers both physically and mentally. She also helped them get used to their new limbs so they could use them in battle. Sure, Kushina had trouble walking around at first when she was turned, just like Makoto did. Even so, Kushina got the hang of it pretty quickly, and she and Makoto were both able to use their tails like they were second nature. Akemi said that because Kushina was her former container, she was already part kitsune and could get used to her tails quickly, while Makoto had training right away, even if it was only for a few days. Akemi was surprised that Kushina could change into her one-tailed kit form just as easily as she did. However, Kushina was her former host, so anything a kitsune does would come naturally to her. So, the two kept training with Akemi watching over them, correcting their mistakes and helping them get better at what they were good at. She told Kushina that, like Makoto, her natural abilities had just gone through the roof, making her even more dangerous than she was before. She had also said that the Ukami demons were like her, and that the kitsune were like them in that they were experts in their own elements. That was the first one, Kitsune High, Foxfire, which Akemi said could not only cut through Ninjenkai's human world, magma like butter and make it look like warm water compared to heat, but also break apart the flames of hellfire themselves. It was also used as body armor, which Akemi was the only one who knew about. The woman showed her new sister how to do this by controlling the flames around her body to make a sort of armor that protects you from fire, water, or ice. She also taught her how to control fire and shape it to make weapons like swords, katanas, kunais, and shuriken. Even though that wasn't the only thing she worked on during the night, Akemi made her and Makoto meditate so they could get better at controlling their yokai and make their powers stronger. She also had them improve their physical strength even more, even though they were already fit. To Akemi, though, they looked pitiful. She made them do exercises that would make Maida Guy cry out of pain and fear before he ran back to his mother's warm embrace. This is how bad it was. Since Kushina and Makoto were both demons, their bodies were much stronger and more durable than any human could ever hope to have. This is why Akemi's training didn't turn them into mush at the end of each day. Because Akemi made them do exercises like running around the deck 100 times, doing 50 push-ups, 30 pull-ups, and 50 sit-ups while wearing weights. But these weren't normal weights. They were weights caused by yokai. They looked like normal weights on the outside, but each of them was heavy enough to break a human body into dust. For example, the weights on their arms were both 5 tons for each arm. Both of their legs weighed 10 tons, and the weight around their waists acted as a belt and added another 5 tons. When you add up all of their extra weight, which was 90 tons, you get 90,000. If Naruto's ship didn't have self-restraining and strengthened seas, those two would have fallen through a long time ago. So, by the end of their first day of training, you could say that both Kushina and Makoto were flat on the deck cursing Akemi and calling her the slave driver of Makai. When Akemi said she would increase the weights at the start of each week, things got even worse for the two. This went on for a few days, until the 10th day of their trip. By then, the girls had noticed something during their training. That being was Naruto. He was acting like himself, but he looked like he was having trouble with something, like he was in pain like Makoto's but worse. When Makoto saw him coughing uncontrollably in his room while the door was slightly open, they first thought this was the case. Then, another sign was that he was getting paler every day, making him look more and more sick. Even though it was a strangely cold day, he still looked like he was on fire, which was another sign that he was sweating more and more. When asked if he was alright, he just said he was fine. But Akemi knew it wasn't true, because she could feel something from Naruto that wasn't sickness. It had nothing to do with that. She didn't know what it was, but it scared the hell out of her. The leader of the Biju and queen of the Kitsune. She didn't know what it was, but she knew it was powerful. It was so old. What she was feeling from Naruto was an ancient power that she couldn't even begin to describe when she first felt it. It was like she was thrown into a huge hurricane and put in the middle of it. She felt pure power, and it made her feel like a kiting that had just been born. This power was so much stronger than her own that it made even the Jubi's power look weak. Whatever it was that was hurting Naruto, she could tell just by looking at him that it was killing him. It finally got to the point where everyone noticed. It was the 13th day of their journey. The day Uzumaki D. Naruto's life changed forever. Flashback. Uzumaki D. Naruto was standing on the deck of their caravel. He looked even paler than usual, like he was about to die. His eyes were red and bloodshot, and he was sweating like a river. Even though this was happening, he didn't seem to be bothered as he watched the girls train with their new powers. It was quite a sight, and he couldn't help but be proud of them and thankful to Akemi for teaching them. Even though he didn't know what was wrong with him, he could feel himself getting weaker and weaker. He couldn't help but feel angry about it. Still, he could feel that something else was going on, but he couldn't figure out what. So far as he knows, he has never been sick because of his unusual healing, which was about the same as Kyuubi's. So, what was going on with him? Bu bump. Naruto grabbed the wooden railing and grunted as he felt the pain in his heart start up again. This happened every day, for no reason. When Naruto tightened his grip, he fell to his first knee. He couldn't see the women's shocked faces or hear them scream his name in worry. Before he gasped again, all he could do was hold on to the place where his heart was. Bu bump. Bu bump. Cough, cough, cough. Ah. He grunted as he couldn't catch it in time and painfully hissed as blood poured out of his mouth. He didn't know what was going on, but the agonizing pain was getting worse. He didn't know what was going on, but it felt like a poisoned dagger had just been stuck in his heart. He had such a tight hold on the rail that it cracked and then broke into pieces. Naruto realized he was losing his senses when he could no longer feel anything. Everything he saw, smelled, and heard. He didn't even feel the three women running up to him or see their scared faces. All he could feel was the terrible pain in his heart. He couldn't see it, but he was slowly coming to a thought that made his soul scream in denial. Am I dying? He wanted to scream and roar in anger at the thought. He couldn't die now because he had just gotten back together with Kushina and they were just starting their lives together. No, he refused to die. Not with that awful illness. I won't die. I won't die from this sad disease. Bu bump. Bu bump. Bu bump. No. I refuse. No. I won't die. I won't die, damn it. Bu bump. Bu bump. He let out a hoarse gasp as blood flew out of his mouth again. This time, with his eyes only half open, he saw the blood hit Kushina's horrified face instead of the wooden floor. He would have smiled and told her it was okay. If he could move his hand, he would have wiped her tears away and kissed her to show that he was okay. But he couldn't. All he could do was fall to his other knee, and he started to fall forward because he couldn't grab anything. He noticed that his eyes were closing, even though he was trying hard to keep them open. He knew that if he closed his eyes, he would know. If his eyes closed, they might never reopen. He didn't feel the impact of falling onto the deck, and he couldn't feel the blood dripping from his mouth like it had for days. He could hear his heart slowing down and feel himself getting colder and colder every second. He could only look at the three women, and it hurt him to see their horrified faces and terrified eyes. He wanted to calm them down and show them he wasn't going to die. But even that he couldn't do. He felt so weak. So pathetic. So defenseless. When his father was surrounded, did he feel this way? Naruto raised his hand, which got Kushina's attention. She grabbed it and pulled it to her face, where it was cupping her tear-stained cheek. Naruto could only look into her eyes as darkness began to cover his vision. He could see Akemi doing everything she could to heal him with whatever Yukai healing technique she knew as well as Makoto, but he honestly thought it wouldn't work. It's likely that. Naruto-kun, get up. It's okay. Come on, she said. He could see her mouth move, but he couldn't hear a word, which showed that his hearing was also gone. He could only smile because that was all he could do. The blood that was dripping from his mouth gathered in his smile. This smile scared Kushina a lot, because she couldn't get rid of the feeling of dread that was growing in her stomach. When his eyes slowly started to close, she was horrified and tried desperately to wake him up, saying, Naruto-kun. Keep your eyes open. Damn it. She yelled, stay awake. And did almost everything she could. But it didn't help, because no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't keep his eyes from falling. Damn it, am I going to die this way? By a damned illness? Damn it, I don't want to die. I don't want to do it at all. I won't die here. And you won't, young one, he said. Before Naruto completely lost consciousness, he only had time to raise an eyebrow in his mind. This made the three women even more worried. He didn't feel Akemi carry him into his room. All he saw was a flash of Kushina's eyes before all he saw was darkness. After that, Naruto's thoughts. Darkness. That's all he could see, and all he could feel was himself floating on air, touching nothing solid. Naruto slowly opened his eyes and saw that he was standing on almost nothing, which didn't surprise him too much because he had a vague idea of where he was. He looked around and saw nothing but darkness and emptiness that felt like it could swallow up everything alive. As he looked around in silence, he never saw a dark hole open up behind him, through which walked a person about the same height as him, give or take a few inches. Welcome, child. Naruto quickly changed his tense, guarded stance when he heard this baritone voice that was a bit distorted. When he saw the man in front of him, his eyes only opened a little. His very presence shook him to the core, but there was something about this person that reminded him of someone else. For he was looking at a man who was the same height as him or maybe a few inches taller. The man seemed to have some of the same armor as him, but not all of it. He was very tall, which was easy to tell, but other than that, everything else about the man was strange. Because he was so big, most of his body was covered in armor. His giant legs and feet were covered in leather boots with metal grips that seemed to work just like the man's own. Around his waist was some kind of belt with two bronze metal points, one that went up to his chest and the other that went down. There were red leather straps in this belt, and two of them hung from his waist. From what he could see, he had a tight black shirt on his chest that showed off his huge chest muscles. Next, he looked at the man's arms. The right one surprised him because it had the same silver pauldron and demonic design as his own. Below it, on his forearms and hand, was a strangely designed gauntlet with clawed metal fingers. On his left arm, though, was what really got to him. Part of his arm was covered by a crimson cowl that looked like it had been burned, and below this, Naruto saw something that really made him wonder who this man was. Because it was such a big gauntlet, he wondered if demons had made it. For it was a gauntlet with strange designs that didn't look human to Naruto. The fact that the designs gave off a red glow only made him more suspicious. These designs led straight to what looked like a skull, which was yellow and had red eyes. The strange bronze pauldron on the man's left shoulder, which looked like a bat's wing, was the last thing to notice about him. Under this, the rest of it covered the man's upper chest, collarbone, mid-back, and head, making it impossible to see his hair. It was connected to the red burned cowl. That was strange in and of itself, because his hair was all white with a light bluish tint. From what he could see, the man's skin was very tanned, almost to the point of being bronze. He also had a mark on his forehead that was glowing with red lines that reminded him of runes. The last thing he could see was the man's eyes. They stopped him in his tracks because they gave off so much power, wisdom, and control that Naruto wondered if this man was a god. It was like looking into two pools of the deepest ocean when you looked into his eyes. He thought it was strange that these eyes reminded him of his own when he was younger. Naruto couldn't help but feel like he knew this person from somewhere, but he didn't. Does he? The man seemed to notice his questioning and curious eyes, and when he spoke, his voice was so full of both divine and demonic power that it sent a chill up his spine, but he didn't mean him any harm. He was just curious and proud. Youngster. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and I'll answer them all. But first, we need to talk about a lot of things, including you and the situation you're in, as well as me and your birth mother. When Naruto heard this, his eyes almost popped out of his head. But he kept quiet as the man went on. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is the second horseman, and I am the youngest of the 4 horsemen. My name is War, and Uzumaki D. Naruto and I have a lot to talk about. Naruto just gave him a dirty look and wondered how he knew his name. Alright then. Talk. The man now known to be War then spoke. Real life. Is he going to be okay, Akemi-ne-chan? Kushina asked with tears in her eyes as she and Makoto knelt next to Naruto's bed. Akemi sat next to Naruto, her hands glowing a greenish-red color. When they first saw Naruto holding onto the railing, he was coughing, and they were even more worried when he fell to his knee. When they went to check on him, they saw that he was getting worse and worse. They tried to get his attention, but he didn't answer, which made them worry that his life was in danger. Then, Akemi quickly picked up his body and sped toward his room, with the others following to help ease his pain. So, Naruto was lying on his bed with sheets over him and a wet, folded towel on his head to cool his high fever. Even so, they were surprised to see blood when he coughed, and when he fell to the deck, it really scared them. They had their suspicions, but when they saw it for themselves, they could see that Naruto was in real, life-threatening pain. But they had a lot of questions about what this disease was, what it was doing to Naruto, and how it got there in the first place. But what was most important was, what was wrong with him? Why didn't he tell them? Akemi stopped ministering healing inside. Then, with a small frown on her face, she said, "I'm really not sure," he said. Kushina-chan, Naruto's heart was fine when he woke up this morning, but now it's just crazy, and the way it beats is making me worry. At one point, his heart beats so fast that I'm afraid it's going to shoot out of his chest, and at another point, it stops beating altogether. I don't know what's wrong with him, but I do know that is making his blood slowly fill up in his lungs. I can tell because it happens often and has been going on for a while. I can also tell that something else in him is affecting his body as a whole, which is why his eyes were so bloodshot they looked like they were going to bleed, and why he had an abnormally high fever, she said with a worried frown as she looked down at the man she had grown to love even more. Kushina could only nod her head and then look back at Naruto's body. When she did, she saw his chest moving up and down in a strange way, which scared her, as did the pained look on her face. When she looked at Makoto, she saw that the woman was about to start crying, but she held back her tears because she didn't want to look weak in front of anyone. She felt the same way, but she was used to seeing Naruto in situations like these. That didn't mean she wasn't worried, though. In fact, she was very worried. Because she felt completely broken without him, and she couldn't even begin to imagine what her life would be like without him here. It was a scary thought that she put out of her mind right away. She knew Naruto wouldn't die so easily because he was hard to kill. He had killed armies, fought and defeated Kages who could destroy a village, and was the only man she knew who had fought and defeated a Biju with only his own strength. He won't die, and a stupid little disease won't kill him either. I'm sure he'll get through this. I know he will. Was what she was thinking about the person she loved before she hugged Makoto. The woman took the hug quickly and pressed her face into Makoto's shoulder. She rubbed Makoto's back to try to make her feel better, all the while trying to keep her own tears from falling. Even though he knew he would be fine in the end. Still, it broke my heart to see him in so much pain. Like Kushina, Akemi knew Naruto would be fine, but she was more worried about the energy inside Naruto. His chakra was no longer chakra at all, because it was changing and shifting. She didn't know what it was, but she did know that his chakra was completely changing from a human chakra to one that felt more demonic. But what was even stranger was that his chakra also gave off divine vibes, which made her even more confused. But what really worried her was that his energy was growing so quickly that it was more than a human body could hold. She thought this was what was wrong with him, but she couldn't be sure. She could only tell that he was getting more and more active. Scary, though, was that his energy was already much higher than hers. What's going on with you, Naru-kun? Well, they're all going to find out. They didn't know that Naruto's body was giving off a red and black streaked outline. Naruto's thoughts. Oh, I see. So you're saying you're a Nephilim, an ancient race that existed before angels or demons. They were called the Old Ones, but only 4 of them were left after a terrible war. They were called the 4 Horsemen, and their names were Fury, Strife, Death, and finally War. Which you 4 worked for an organization called the Charred Council. Your original goal was to protect all people, but the council told you that you could only do that when the 7 seals broke. When all 7 broke, the War of the Apocalypse would start. And you told me later that the council tricked you into coming just before the 7th seal was broken, which broke the ironclad rule and took away your power. When demons and angels found out that the council had set you up, you had to fight a one-man war. So, after you beat Abaddon and took the 7th seal before you broke it, you and your siblings went to war with the council. This war led to the End War, which destroyed the planet and everyone on it. After you and the other horsemen won, you went to the White City, also known as Heaven, where you met with the higher-ups and asked to meet with the Maker, the ultimate being who made everything known to humans, demons, and angels. You asked him to start over with the planet and give it a more stable mind. After that, you and the rest of your siblings lived alone as the middlemen between heaven and hell. Is that right? Naruto said this as he floated in front of War and looked into the two pools of sapphire liquid. The man confirmed with a nod and a faraway look in his eyes. Yes. Every word of it is the whole truth, he said. Naruto could tell that the man was telling the truth because, even though his eyes were as blank as ever, every word he said was so full of truth that he couldn't help but believe him. But. I see, but what does this have to do with you, me, or my situation right now? Or, for that matter, how does this have anything to do with my mother? He asked, completely confused. War knew this was going to happen, so he just spoke to Naruto again, but this time he sounded sad. Ah, yes. Well, let me start from the beginning. You do remember the woman named Uriel, right? Naruto nodded. He remembered how War had described the woman as the champion of heaven and commander of the angel forces. During his explanation of her, he made a remark that War seemed to get a little lost in his words. Yes, I remember her, but what does she have to do with anything? War just let out what seemed to be a sigh but sounded more like a grunt. Well, she's the whole reason for it. While I was alone, I ran into Uriel again, and that's when she asked for a duel with me again. This time, it wasn't out of petty revenge or spite, but because she wanted to see who was stronger. She was strong. She was stronger than anyone else I'd ever fought, and she only got stronger as the war went on. Our battle shook the land and scared my other siblings, even my older brother. Death thought the fight was both fun and crazy, but I beat her in the end. I thought she would be mad at me, but to my surprise, she was. You could say satisfied, and since then, we've gotten closer and closer until we fell in love. We had to keep our relationship a secret, though, because it was against the rules for an angel to love a Nephilim. Because of this, Uriel gave birth to our first and only a child. When Naruto heard the last word, he could hear both sadness and anger in War's voice as he clenched his fists tightly. The baby was a newborn boy, and we loved and cared for him so much that we couldn't stand to be apart for almost a day. But no matter how well things were going, everything came crashing down when a spy from heaven found out about us and told the higher-ups in heaven. Soon, word got around all of heaven, and then my siblings found out. Even though my siblings had protected us from heaven's forces, Uriel and I had no other choice when we saw heaven's full power coming down on us. We did the only thing we could, which was to send our child to Earth, since heaven didn't know he was there. We didn't even have time to think of a name for our baby before Uriel and I went to help my siblings fight against heaven. In the end, we all caused an apocalypse in heaven, which killed us all. We all died, and the Maker replaced us with new gods and protectors. But even the Maker didn't know that I and Uriel's child were still alive. He said, making Naruto's eyes widen as he started to understand what War was saying. Everyone from the past died except for me. I lived on as a soul in my son, and when he had children, I was passed on to them, and so on. But because of my immense power, which was in that body, it started to hurt them inside. My power was leaking, and just a drop of my blood entering their system would either tear a normal human to pieces or give them a disease that attacks the heart quickly. I see you're putting it all together, which is good, he said when he saw Naruto's suspicious face. And how does this have to do with my mother? I don't even know her or my father. How did she survive the disease? War asked. This made War's face look both very sad and a little sad. That's easy, because each of our ancestors had at least one child before they died of the disease. Even so, your mother was the only descendant who reminded me so much of Uriel that it was shocking. I can't tell you her name because I don't even know it. All I remember about her is the day she gave birth to you. You see, she was born with the disease, but that didn't stop her. She fought through it, and whether she did it on purpose or not, her strong will kept her from dying. On the day you were born, though, she kept you in her womb because she was on the run. I think she called the people she was running from Marines, but she gave birth to you in the elemental nations. I can tell you, though, that even as she was dying, she loved you deeply, as any mother would. Even as she was dying, she had the strength to hold you in her arms and give you your name before she died. Your mother was truly one of a kind, he told Naruto, who was looking at him with wide eyes. He couldn't believe what he was hearing, but every word was true. Everything War said was the honest to goddamn truth. No matter how much he tried to deny it, he couldn't help but feel proud of what his mother did for him while he was still in her womb. But when he heard that these Marines were looking for her, where was the man who gave him life? Why didn't he look out for her? So many unanswered questions ran through his head, but he was sure of one thing: he would get answers from these Marines. There was no doubt about that. I see. Then that would mean, Naruto said. The man nodded, and to Naruto's surprise, he smiled on his usually stone-like face. This smile, however, was filled with pride, and it was all for him. For some reason, Naruto felt like his father Ryu was smiling at him again. Yes, you are the next generation, and I have to say that you have really taken up my role as a warrior of war. From what I could tell from your memories, you were the picture of chaos, bloodshed, and war wherever you went. It was so sad to see. Then again, you did it all for that woman, Kushina. She reminds me of both Uriel and your mother in a strange way, he said. Naruto just raised an eyebrow, and War shook himself out of his thoughts. Either way, I think you're probably wondering why we're talking like this since you think you're dead. Well, let me explain. Unlike everyone else, Naruto was born with some demonic power that I assume came from your father. Anyway, because of this, the disease couldn't get to you for a few years, until you reached the age you are now. However, your age has only made the disease stronger than ever before, to the point where it's now an instant poison that will kill you right away. I can only say that you have your mother's determination to live for as long as you do. Even now, you are still alive, but you are in a coma, and those 3 women are doing everything they can to keep you alive. When Naruto heard this, the faces of Kushina, Akemi, and Makoto flashed in front of his eyes. When he remembered the situation he was in, he scowled and asked, then, what was the point of telling me this? What was the point of you telling me everything if I was still going to die? War just laughed and walked toward Naruto, which made him raise an eyebrow in surprise. Easy. Since you're the first person to live when the disease has changed so much, and since your survival has given me time to wake up, I can finally wake up to the blood so that you can live. For you see, the only way you can live is if I release your mother's blood and, by extension, my blood and Uriel's blood. Only then will the disease be completely and permanently wiped out, so that not even your children will get it. But this will turn you from a human into what I am or was, which is a Nephilim. This will change you forever. Naruto nodded when he realized this after putting everything together. I see, but if I do that, will I lose my other powers? No, said War, shaking his head. Then he put out his hand, and to Naruto's surprise, Chaos Eater appeared in a pillar of blue and black flames. He watched as War skillfully swung the blade through the air and then stuck it into the ground that wasn't there, making white cracks appear. No, you won't lose any of those skills. Your chakra has just changed and grown stronger in ways that no one could have imagined. You are the first person who is a mix of a Nephilim and an angel. Your energy is unique, and there is no name for it in history. Also, since the blood is going to be stirred up, I'll teach you how to use the powers you've been given.
But don't think for a second that you're invincible. You'll still need to train and perfect these powers.
Naruto nodded because he knew that nothing was ever free without a cost. Yes, I know, but what will happen to me if I do this? War closed his eyes and thought for a moment before answering. To be honest, I don't know, because this has never happened before. But I would say that some of my and Uriel's looks would come into you. Your personality, however, would stay the same. Aside from that, I can say that your skills and abilities would go through the roof. For example, right now, your strength is strong enough to topple a Biju with an 8th tail or a 9th tail. But if you do this, your strength will be even stronger than a Titan's, and your ability to move the earth, which is very impressive, will give you the power to topple a nation if you really wanted to. Your speed will go up so much that you'll be able to move faster than the speed of light. The only thing that will be taken away is your huge height, so you'll be the same height you are now. Your muscles will get smaller, but you'll still be as strong and fast as you were before. Your sixth senses and reflexes will also improve to the point where you can avoid an attack right in front of you. Also, I'm going to give away one of my enhancements that goes with Chaos Eater. You'll see why later on, though. When Naruto heard this, he nodded because he could see that war was coming to an end. He just wanted to get back to the real world as quickly as possible and let the girls know he was okay. Finally, you can't die as a human, demon, or angel, he said. Even I don't know the full extent of your strength, but if I can take the injuries I've been given, as Uriel and you did before this, then I'd say you literally can't die, or it would take a lot to do so. This made Naruto nod, but he didn't show much emotion on the. When War saw the area around them change, he knew they didn't have much time. He told Naruto, hurry, make your choice. Either grab the handle of Chaos Eater and awaken the blood, or don't and die here and now. It's your choice, but time is running out. Your body is dying. When Naruto heard this, he didn't even hesitate. As soon as he grabbed the handle, he saw War laugh. I see you've made your choice. Then get ready for a world of pain, was all Naruto heard before he saw a flash of white and felt the worst pain he had ever felt hit him like a wave of magma. As Naruto faded away, War slowly closed his eyes as the light also hit him, turning his body into nothing but blue light particles. At last, I can go home. I can see you again, brothers and sisters, and I can see you again, Uriel-chan. With that, War's body was gone for good, showing that the last horseman was gone. However, he left behind his love, who still roams the earth. Oh, the mayhem. Real life. Akemi-chan, are you sure we can't do anything else? Makoto asked, and Akemi just saddenedly shook her head. It's been an hour since Naruto was put to bed, and since then, his irregular heartbeat has gotten worse with each passing minute. Meanwhile, the energy that had built up in him had already, to Akemi's surprise, far surpassed that of the legendary Jubi, making it look weak. Since then, though, Naruto's body has been spasming out of control, and blood has been dripping from his mouth, nose, ears, and even eyes. At that point, his body stopped dead in its tracks. It's been 5 minutes. No, I can't do anything else. N. Naru-kun. He's. DD, she didn't get to finish because out of the blue. Ah. Was Naruto's painful scream making him spin around? Did the three girls see, to their utter shock, Naruto gripping the sheets so hard that he was almost ripping them apart, his eyes scrunched shut, his mouth open, and a painful scream coming out? He used to have golden eyes, but now they almost look sapphire. But the thing that caught their attention was the aura coming off of him. It wasn't just white. It was also outlined in gold and had streaks of red and black. The aura itself was just like a blanket of fire around Naruto's body. It moved over him as he screamed louder and louder, but the fires didn't seem to be hurting him at all. They ran quickly toward him, but the flames hit the floor in front of them, stopping them before they got hit. They saw it go back into the blanket of fire, and they could only watch as the flames covered Naruto's lower body and upper chest. Akemi kept staring with wide eyes at Naruto and the flames that were covering him. What the hell? I saw him die, but this energy is the same energy I felt coming from Naru-kun before, but it's stronger and more concentrated this time. What's going on here? Then she and the other two saw the flames slowly creep up Naruto's body until they reached his neck. They had no choice but to watch because they didn't want to get burned themselves. He let out one more scream that shook the ship, and the flames covered his face completely. Ah! He yelled, but then his voice went silent as the flame covered his face and hair. Soon enough, the flaming aura wrapped Naruto in its fiery, blazing aura of power and energy. The flames were strangely not burning the sheets or the wood. As the three girls watched, all they could do was stare. Akemi-chan, what is going on? Makoto said, staring at where her captain and most important person was lying. Kushina just nodded and tried to figure out what was going on with her lover. Akemi just looked at them both, let out a small sigh, and then looked back at the fire. Honestly, girls, I don't know what's going on anymore. All I know is that Naruto is still alive, but something is changing about him inside those flames. I can feel it. The way she said it made both Kushina and Makoto gasp before they looked back into the flames that held their love interest. They really hoped he was okay, because they would have jumped in and tried to get him out, but they had a feeling those flames would do more than just burn them. But they didn't have to wait long. Bu bump, bu bump. The sudden sound of a heartbeat drew the three girls' attention to Naruto's body, where it was lying. With each passing second, the heartbeat got louder and faster. It only got louder when, to their surprise, the humanoid covered in fire moved, showing that he was sitting up without making a sound. They watched with bated breath as the man in the cloak of fire stood up. The cloak of fire covered anything that would have shown that it was Naruto, such as his eyes. When they saw the person getting closer, they stopped moving. To their surprise, the fire blanket started to unravel around the person in a spinning vortex, slowly revealing the person underneath. As it happened, Akemi suddenly felt even more nervous than she had before. She was shaken to her core by the godly power coming from this figure. Even the Jubi wouldn't be able to beat this power. She and the other two were mesmerized as the person's fiery aura spread out from their feet and went up. Naruto's feet, legs, and waist are all armored. This time, he is wearing some kind of belt. Up top, it showed Naruto's bare, muscled chest. His skin was now a bit darker than usual, and his sickly pale skin was wiped clean. As the flames went up, they revealed that his gauntlets and pauldrons were made of pure silver instead of the usual black. Up top was a shockingly bright red hooded coat that covered Naruto's chest, back, and shoulders. The hood went all the way up over his head. That's when Naruto's shadowed face came into view as the flames spread out. His mouth was set in an impassive position, and his eyes were the only thing that caught their attention. And what eyes they were! For just a few seconds, they were staring into two twin pools of liquid azure that seemed to glow with an inner power that sent chills up their backs and made their face almost burn as their cheeks turned a good shade of red. When Naruto took off the hood over his head, they were even more shocked to see his normal spiky, long, golden black hair with black streaks. This time, though, the ends of his hair were white, and he still had the same broken red mark on his forehead that went down over his eyes, making him look even stranger. In their thoughts. It went away though, and Naruto's normal golden orbs came back, and he looked at the girls' faces with a smile on his face. He slowly opened his arms, even though he didn't want to do what he was about to do. So, you girls are just going to stand there and look at me? Aura, he started, but before he could finish, he was attacked by three blurs, two of which were crimson and one of which was raven. He was just thinking about something else when he saw himself flying back with three sets of arms wrapped around his torso and three female figures pressing against him. Naruto-kun. The three girls yelled in alarm as they slammed into his bed and piled on top of him. Their combined weight made his bed sink even more. He looked at them without caring where they were and mentally hit himself when he saw their worried and scared faces, and even more so when he saw tears running down their cheeks. He spoke with a small smile and said, "I'm sorry. I was afraid for you. I'll tell you everything, because you all deserve to know." With that, he surprised them all, especially Akemi and Makoto, when he wrapped his arms around them and pulled them closer to him, making them freeze. Only when they looked into his caring golden eyes did they just cuddle up to him and wait for the explanation. When he saw this, he spoke up and began to explain. End of flashback. So, he told them everything that was wrong with him, like his family history and how he met war. He also told them what was making him sick in the first place. Suffice it to say that when the girls heard what Naruto had been through, they were very shocked. When they heard about his history with war, Kushina, Makoto, and Akemi were so shocked that Akemi just passed out. She couldn't believe that a descendant of that man still lived, and that it was Naruto. Though, the girls never left Naruto's side for the rest of the day because they were stuck to him like glue. He must have been able to tell that this worried them more than they let on, so he didn't say anything about their actions and just went to sleep with the girls hugging him forever to make sure he was still there. He couldn't say he didn't sleep well that night though. But the next day, things changed, and it wasn't because of the girls or Naruto. Instead, it was because of something else that happened while the girls and Naruto were training. He had to get used to his slightly different body and the new powers he got from his ancestor war. It was at this time that they could see an island in the distance, with Naruto and the others. A man about 6 feet 5 inches tall stood on the deck and looked out at the closing-in island. He had a ripped body, judging by his very ripped chest and 10-pack. That didn't mean his muscles were too big, though, because they were tight and gave him a lean look. This shows that his body is made for both speed and strength. His skin was a tan color that looked almost bronze in the sun. His face was masculine and well-proportioned. There was no sign of baby fat anywhere. He was wearing black leather boots with silver metal buckles on them. His black cargo pants with silver metal plates strapped to the sides of his legs went up to his knees. He had a belt around his waist that had some kind of strange buckle and split in 2 directions. One sheet of gold metal shot straight up from the buckle on the man's chest, which covered part of his chest. As the other piece of metal was more of a shield going downward. 2 of the red leather straps were loose from the buckle and hung around the man's waist. The buckle was in the middle of the straps. He didn't have a shirt on, so his ripped chest and hard 10-pack were on full display. All that could be seen on his chest was a red cowl that covered his upper chest, both shoulders, and his head. The hood of the cowl completely covered his hair and almost completely hid his face. Last but not least, he had metal spalders on his shoulders. The right one was silver and had a design of a demon's snarling face inside. The other was more like a giant bat's wing, but it was black. On both of his arms, he wore silver gauntlets with designs of demons etched into them. His metal-plated gloves had fingers that looked like monster claws. His fists were relaxed, but the rest of his body was tense and ready to fight. On the man's shoulder was the famous Chaos Eater, a huge blade that looked like it came from another world. It was about as tall as the man himself, give or take a few inches. Last but not least, the man had golden eyes that looked like they were glowing from under his hood. This man was Uzumaki D. Naruto, and he and the girls were on their way to an island they could see had people on it. This meant they could finally find out where they were and get some supplies. Oi! Naru-kun. We'll be on the island in a few more minutes, said a voice from above him. When he looked up, he saw Kitsune Biju Akemi wearing the same battle-ready kimono she wore when he first met her. He gave a small smile and then nodded to show that he agreed. Good, we'll pull up anchor when we get to port. Keep an eye out for Akemi-chan on any other ship, she said with a smile before going back to her job. She mostly kept an eye out for danger on the ship because she had the best view of everyone. Even so, that didn't mean she didn't have skills. In fact, he had seen firsthand how amazing she was at healing, which is why he made her the doctor of the crew. You know, Naruto-kun, I don't know why, but when I see you looking out at the sea, it's like you were born to be out here, TT Ebane, a soft, loving voice said from behind him. When he turned around, he saw a smiling Kushina walking up to him. She was dressed like she was going to do close combat, but it still showed off her perfect hourglass shape. She wore tight-fitting black cargo pants and black shinobi sandals, just like him, but they hugged her body like a second skin, just like her crimson tank top did, since it showed off her well-developed DD cup bust. Over her shoulders was a red trench coat with long sleeves and the Uzumaki swirl on the back. Last was her original katana from when she was a child in the Uzumaki clan. Naruto had given it to her when they were young and it was strapped to her hip. Her beautiful maroon-red bangs were held back on the left side of her face with a yellow hairpin, which showed that her face was in the shape of a heart. She hid her kitsune tails and ears because they were going to be in a crowded area and didn't want to draw too much attention to themselves. Also, Naruto himself was a big draw, especially because of how he looks. Ma, you may be right. For some reason, just being out here on the open sea really feels like home, he said with a sigh. I still don't know why. Kushina just laughed as she stood next to him and watched the town on the island come into view. Who knows, she mumbled as she turned her attention to him. She couldn't help but look at his new look, even if it was too different. With the armor he wore, he looked like he came straight out of hell. Still, it was hard for her to believe that the Naruto she had known for so long was now a member of a race older than angels or demons and a descendant of a man who shook the world to its core. But I'm just glad he's the same Naruto he was before, just a little bit more loving. That made her smile, because it was true. Naruto was more caring and protective of her and the other two than he had ever been before. She wondered why he was, but she didn't ask. She liked it, especially how much he held everyone's attention as he told them what had happened to him. She loved every minute of it, and she could tell that Akemi and Makoto did, too, by the way they blushed. He asked, "Where is Makoto-chan?" She just looked at him and pointed behind her. She is there finishing up the last of the coordinates for this location in case something happens in the future. Besides that, she also wants to make a map of this place. Naruto just smiled and nodded to show that he agreed, and then he turned his attention back to the island that was closing in. He could see that they were already coming to the dock, but when he saw how many ships were there, he was shocked. But when he saw that the name, Marine, was written on the sails of one ship in particular, he narrowed his eyes. Well, this should be fun. He was so right. Loguetown docks. Naruto and the girls got off the ship when they got to the dock and tied it down. They walked into what they thought was a town. Only from what they had seen so far, they could tell that the food, weapons, and clothes for sale were all very different from what they had seen in the elemental nations. People weren't too different from each other, though some were shorter or taller than others. As they walked through the crowd, they got a lot of attention, mostly because of Naruto. His huge size and pure aura made many people back up in fear because of his intimidating size. Even though it was annoying, they didn't say anything and kept going, even though some of them were looking at the weapon on Naruto's back with both interest and fear. As they walked, though, they didn't see a blur of shadow come out of an alley, and by the time Naruto could do anything about it, it had already hit him. Crash. The voice of a young man in his early 20s came from the ground, where he was rubbing his head from the sudden impact. He wore black boots and what looked like white pants that covered the tops of his boots. The man had a red sash around his waist, and the last thing seen on him was an open red long-sleeved jacket that showed his bare chest. Like Naruto, he didn't wear a shirt, so his chest and abs were visible. His black, kind of spiky hair was easy to see, but it was his straw hat with a red ribbon tied around the bottom that really stood out. Naruto, who was still standing after the crash, looked down at the man and offered him his hand. "Are you okay?" he asked. The man froze, then looked up and showed Naruto his black eyes and a smile that was too big for him. The man grabbed his hand tightly and pulled himself up until he was standing about 6 feet 3 inches away from Naruto. "Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was going she, he said with a laugh that made Naruto raise an eyebrow. Before another man came up from behind the straw-hatted man and hit him on the head with his fist, he was doing that. "Damn it, Roger, why do you always run into everyone?" asked a man in his early 30s who was in the group of 4. He was a man with long, straight brown hair that was pulled back and had some gray strands in it. He wore a shirt with an odd pattern and dark green pants that ended just above his ankles, where he wore black boots. The man named Roger rubbed the back of his head sheepishly and nodded. "Yeah, sorry about that, I was in a hurry," he said with an unnaturally wide smile. The girls just looked at him blankly. Naruto just smiled at him because he thought he was funny, but something about him seemed familiar to him. "Please forgive him, but he can be an idiot sometimes." "My name is Silvers Rayleigh, and it's nice to meet you," the older man said, while Roger just smiled, stuck out his hand, and spoke. "Yes, and my name is Gold D. Roger," he replied. Naruto's eyes got so big when he heard his name that the girls thought they would pop out of their sockets. Naruto and the girls met Roger and Rayleigh on that fateful day.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.